Here is Steve Rogers, former member of the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force and retirement lieutenant commander from the Office of Naval Intelligence. So as that press conference wrapped up, it got a little bit tense there regarding terminology and what to label this. The mayor and the police commissioner, they're very careful about what to call it. The mayor saying it's intentional, it's violent, it's criminal, but they did not want to label it anything beyond that. Does that at all impact the investigation?
I believe it does. It impacts public awareness. Look, first the NYPD commissioner and then the mayor described this act as a violent criminal act. Reminds me of Fort Hood all over again. For some reason, they can't come to grips with the reality that this is a terrorist attack. Look, you don't need an international connection. You don't need ISIS or Al-Qaeda to be part of this. You can have a lone wolf. You can have somebody who's decided to commit a terrorist act.
But how does that impact how does that affect the investigation?
Well, here's what happens. Psychologically, it affects it with regards to people coming forward, for example. Look, if you're going to say, this is a criminal act and it's going to be treated as such, then the public awareness, I believe, is going to be not as heightened as it should be. The investigation is at this point going to be a lot of forensics involved, as we said earlier, but terminology is important. Words are important.
Okay, let's talk about what we don't know. There are so many questions that remain unanswered. Who was responsible for the explosion? You know, what was inside the pressure cooker? Why the site of that explosion was selected? The motive behind this. I mean, how crucial are those components, and what does that say not only for this particular incident and whether or not this may end up being connected to others in Seaside, New Jersey, the bombing that took place just before the start of a race. Thankfully, the race had not started. It was delayed, so no one was hurt. It was a charity race, a 5K run benefiting Marines, so no one was hurt there. And then you have this incident at the Crossroads Mall in Minnesota, where ISIS has now claimed that the stabber of that mall was inspired by them, calling the perpetrator the soldier of the Islamic State. So why is it the labeling important in terms of perhaps finding out if these things were connected or they were isolated incidents?
Well, it's important to see if they were connected, and apprehending an individual and apprehending him quickly will probably give you a motive. You got the best law enforcement agency in the world, and I believe they're going to apprehend the individual. But you need to interview that individual, and they will give you the motive. Another thing is this. You asked the question, why those locations? Many times, and I've learned this from the Al-Qaeda training manual years ago, they will probe for a greater and a more intense attack. Why these locations? A little puzzling, but they could be probing. They could be looking at response time. How many people are going to respond? Who's going to respond? So at this point, critically important to apprehend the individual or individuals who committed this act.
Steve Rogers, thank you very much for being here with us. And Eric, as I toss it over to you,